Hey class, how are you guys? I miss everyone so much. This is Miss Sipe, obviously. I'm at home. I'm going to read you our story, our chapter book. It's As Brave as You by Jason Reynolds. And I'm reading this with permission from our publisher, which is Athenaeum Publishing, a division of Simon & Schuster. The little white cat is Hudson, my kitty. He's going to be coming up and down. He'll see you guys, and he'll probably try to interrupt a little bit as we read. I'm going to take off where we left off. On our Schoology page the other day, I asked you to go back and think about what we read before our distance learning break. And a lot of you have already commented on that page and told me what you remember about Ernie and Jeannie, and that it is Ernie's 14th birthday, and that they are walking out to try to teach him how to shoot with Crab and Jeannie and Ernie, and Grandma and Tess have stayed back. And I'm just going to start in on it, and you can go ahead and listen. Now, everybody be careful. Crab warned as they entered the woods. Man, we ain't on a battlefield, Grandpa replied, cocky. Crab didn't reply, just made big eyes and did some kind of hand signal to Jeannie and Ernie, indicating that they needed to keep an eye out on Grandpa. And watch for the dog mess. It's all over the place, Crab grunted, taking the lead. Poop-a-ditty. Jeannie had to choke down a laugh. Ernie tapped Jeannie on his shoulder as they began wading through the woods. Yo, here, he handed him his sunglasses. Whoa. Ernie never let him touch his shades. The welt by Jeannie's eyes had nearly faded, but Jeannie put them on anyway. Crab kicked sticks and rocks out of the way, but Grandpa was moving pretty smoothly, his hand light on Jeannie's shoulder. The farther they went in, the tighter Grandpa's grip got, and soon sweat was coming from his hands, sogging up Jeannie's shirt. Jeannie wondered how concerned Grandpa really was, hiking through the trees like that, occasionally tripping over ground roots that Crab couldn't kick anyway. On top of that, it was daytime. Copperheads were wide awake. And just because Jeannie, for all his watching, hadn't seen any yet, doesn't mean that they weren't there. In the distance was the yellow house. Jeannie wanted to point it out to Grandpa, but Grandma said not to mention it. And when Crab did mention it, he almost got mollywopped. Jeannie thought about how Grandpa might react if he found out about Michael Jackson, but the sight of the old house plus all the birds chirping around led Jeannie to hope that maybe another swallow had already been caught, letting him off the hook. They hadn't checked the trap today. Jeannie also had the crazy idea that maybe the tweeting birds were telling the other birds to look out because Crazy Crab was in the woods. Or maybe they were just saying Jeannie the bird napper was coming. Jeannie didn't want the animal world to think that he and his grandfather and his brother were anything like Crab, given that Crab had probably ticked off every critter in there by shooting at them all the time. If he was a squirrel and saw Crab coming, he'd be pretty ticked off. But Jeannie wasn't an animal killer like Crab. Oh wait, he was. He was. And what if the animals somehow knew? And what if they banded together and launched some kind of attack? Jeez. Jeannie eyed the woods nervously until thankfully, and animal attack free, they came to a part of the trail that opened up. It was almost like God forgot to plant trees in this one small circular section, the forest's bald spot. That's it, Crab said. That's where me, y'all's daddy and uncle, and just about every other kid in town learned to shoot, thanks to your old granddaddy here. Jeannie took it all in, trying to imagine his dad and Uncle Wood as kids, getting shooting lessons from Grandpa. Grandpa able to see and teaching Dad how to shoot a rifle. Grandpa was looking left to right, right to left, probably imagining the same thing, like how it used to be. Crab set down his rifle and a bag of cans and bottles on the ground and began pulling on some of the tree branches that surrounded the area. You okay? Jeannie asked Grandpa softly. Grandpa leaned in. I said, you okay? Jeannie asked again. Oh, little Wood, I'm fine. What do you think me and you have been getting all this practice for? He said it low and smooth. Wait, what? Wait, Jeannie's mind was erupting. Grandpa had planned this whole thing? All those night missions? Why, they were basically the training session so that now he could be here for Ernie's 14th birthday, so that he could keep up the tradition. At first, Jeannie felt kind of stupid, like he'd been pranked. But that feeling washed away as it dawned on him that he was part of the reason that this tradition could continue. He had been a big part of it, in fact. So that is why you asked me to take you outside all those times? Jeannie tried to keep his voice down. Not that it would have mattered. Crab was getting the target situated, and Ernie was drifting off in space somewhere. Always with the questions, Grandpa laughed. But yeah, I'm tired of feeling like some blind baby in a doggone playpen, and you were the only one who didn't treat me like one. Well, that sure made Jeannie feel good, but before he could reply, Crab called out, "This one will do," shaking a limb, and he let it twang back into place while he dug out a Coke can from the bag. He wiggled the tip of the tree limb into the mouth of the can. "This here's your target," he told Ernie, who was standing off to the side, as if this wasn't about him. "Now let's talk basics, more importantly, the rules." Crab lifted the rifle in both hands, like he was about to demonstrate how to shoot an arrow from a bow, which would have been cool, in Jeannie's estimation. But just when Crab opened his mouth to explain rule number 1, Grandpop interrupted. "Rule number 1, he says, Ernie has to shoot my gun. He's my oldest grandson, and I think it's only right that he uses the family 6-shooter. He reached under his shirt, and he pulled out the revolver. Crab's eyes went wide. It was an old silver beauty with detailing on the pearl handle, a shine on the barrel. Crab looked like he wanted to kiss it, like he wanted to eat it. "Okay, old man, you got it." Then he rattled through a bunch of old stuff that Jeannie never even knew about guns. Turns out they were way more complicated than you'd ever guess. For one thing, you don't just point and shoot. Crab explained that there were 6 shots in the revolver. The bullets were in a thing called the cylinder, which looked a lot like far metal honeycombs that popped out from one side of the gun. Jeannie had seen that honeycomb thing at a bunch of movies, but he never knew the name. Grandpa wasn't hanging on Jeannie's shoulders anymore, but he stayed brushed up close. "No matter what, son, never ever point a gun at a person. Be careful with these things. They're not toys. You got me?" Jeannie instantly had questions that weren't the kind that you asked out loud, at least not in this moment. These were questions to write down. Why were toy guns invented? When were they invented? When was Coca-Cola invented? What's the difference between a rifle and a revolver? Why only 6 shots? Why not 7? Is it a 6-shooter because it just sounds better than saying 7-shooter? What he wasn't thinking about was Michael Jackson or the red truck for a change. All he could think about was how awesome this was. "Of course, Grandpop, I'm not stupid," Ernie was saying, sort of smart-mouthed. It was the first thing he had said since Jeannie had taken off his sunglasses. "Yeah, oh, don't think you are, but it's always the smart ones, the ones who know it all, that make the most mistakes." Crab waited until it seemed like Grandpop was done. Then he continued explaining what was what. The hammer, the barrel, the grip, the sight. "And this," he turned the gun on its side now, "is the trigger. Now I'm going to tell you what your grandfather told me. You don't pull the trigger, son. You squeeze it. You got me? You squeeze it." Ernie didn't say a word. He just nodded, looking even more uncomfortable, as if it were even possible. About 100 more minutes of talking about the gun, and Crab finally said that he was ready to let Ernie actually try it. Jeannie was pumped, super hyped. But then he realized something about Ernie. Something was off. He wasn't wearing his shades. His cool was off balance. "Ern," Jeannie called to him. "Ern, here," snatching the black frames from his face. Ernie slipped them back on. Now his cool was back, but only for a second. Take them off. You don't want, What's that?" Grandpop said. Ernie spent nothing. He yanked off the sunglasses. He folded them and slipped them back in his pocket. "All right, showtime." He sort of snapped his wrist, and then the cylinder of that gun popped off. He spun it, looking at all 6 bullets, slapped it closed again. Then for 5 seconds, Crab was the coolest man alive. At least to Jeannie. Click, click, clack. Crab pulled back on the hammer, and he handed the gun, facing the trees, very carefully to Ernie. "All right," he said. "Hold it with your hands. Now look down your sight. Aim at that can." Jeannie had the absurd thought that that branch with the can looked sort of like it had just finished taking a sip, and like it was asking that branch, another branch, to take a sip of it. Then he snapped out of it, and he thought how cool this was. Man, he did want to try. Maybe they'd let him after Ernie. "Keep your elbows bent a little bit, but lock your wrists." "Lock my wrists?" "Keep your wrists tight." Crab held up a weird-looking fist to demonstrate what a tight wrist looked like. Jeannie just looked at him like just a regular wrist. Ernie held the gun up. He turned toward the can. Jeannie studied Ernie, studied his face, his eyes. Something was still off. And it just wasn't the fact that Ernie was wearing shades. Something was definitely off balance, like out of whack. Hold on, Grandpop said out of the blue. That definitely threw Ernie off. He swirled around toward Jeannie and Grandpop, the gun aimed directly at them. The barrel looked. Jeannie ducked, flinging his arms over his head. "Jesus!" Crab yelled. "We went over this, Ernie. Don't ever, ever point it at anybody, ever." Jeannie looked embarrassed. I know, I'm sorry." He'd broken into a sweat. "It's okay, son. It's my fault," Grandpop said. "I just think one of us, Crab, needs to take a test shot. We need to show him how it's done." "One of us?" Crab scoffed. "Yes, meaning me. I should get the first shot." Grandpop smiled wide and weird. But nobody else did, especially not Jeannie, who had just had a gun aimed point blank at his head. He almost wanted to cry or puke. Bye-bye, super hype. What are you talking about? Crab moved over between the gun and Grandpop, and Grandpop just kept smiling. Brooke, what are you talking about? Crab repeated this slower and clearer. Crab, I just want to take a shot. It's been years since I've squeezed this trigger. Just one shot. This boy needs to get used to the sound anyway. Just one shot up in the air. Grandpop said it quiet. He said it calm. He took a step, a brave step. Forward, he reached the gun. Crab shot Grandpop's hand. Caught Grandpop's hand, and by the look on Grandpop's face, Crab must have been gripping it pretty tight. Please, just one. These are my grandsons. These are the only ones I got. Come on. Grandpop half coaxed and half pleaded. His face was a strange mix of proud and wistful. Crab looked at him for what seemed like Jeannie to be forever. Then he let go of Grandpop's hand, and he took the pistol from Ernie. Boys, take 5 steps back. That way. Crab pointed down the trail. Ernie and Jeannie stepped away. Okay, Brooke, here's your gun. 1 shot. Aim overhead. 12 o'clock. Then he took 1 step back. Just 1. Crab took 1 step back. The way Grandpop held the gun, it was like it made to fit his hand, like he was born to shoot, so normal. Nothing like how Ernie looked. Grandpop stood there for a second, just holding the pistol, and then out of nowhere, he thrust his arm straight in the air. Click, click, clack, went the hammer. Boom! Oh my! Jeannie felt like he was standing in the middle of a thunderclap. His bones rattled in his body, and his ears pulsed as if his heart had somehow jumped into them. Soon he heard the second click, and his fingers then seemed to plug on their own. Then again, boom! You said 1, Crab yelled, grabbing the 6-shooter. Grandpop laughed. A laugh Jeannie had never heard, like it was a real laugh. I mean, it was like a kid's laugh. I know. But an old man can change his mind, can't he? Crab waved Ernie back. Let's do this thing before your Grandpop tries to take over your birthday. Let's do it. Ernie took the gun again, and he got back in that same uncomfortable-looking stance that he was in the first time. Now remember, keep your elbows a little bent and your finger wrist tight for the kickback. Aim it at the can. When you got it, squeeze the trigger. Ernie looked a little shaky, almost like the gun had suddenly gotten too heavy for him. He held it up anyway, and he looked through the sight. Wait, Grandpop said. Now what? Crab flung his ears up, looking frustrated. Brooke, just let the boy shoot. I will as soon as he holds it right. Brooke, you can't even see. He is holding it right. No, he's not. I can tell by the way he's breathing. The gun's tipping. His wrist ain't steady. I can hear it. Son, lock your wrists as if you were arm wrestling. He held his own hand down to demonstrate. Ernie blew breath like he always did when he was irritated. He lifted the gun again, locking his wrists, then unlocking them. He closed his left eye to aim, which made his lip curl up to one side. Sweat dripped down his forehead. He licked his lips and swallowed. The gun seemed to be kind of vibrating in Ernie's grip. Jeannie could tell Ernie wasn't holding it as tight as he was supposed to, and Jeannie wasn't sure that he could. Maybe the gun was too heavy. It just wasn't that, though. Something was off. Something was different about him. And for the first time ever, Jeannie could tell that his brother was scared. He was really scared. An airplane flew over them low. Grandpop clamped onto Jeannie's shoulders with both hands. Jeannie put his fingers back in his ears. He got ready for the boom. What he should have done was put his hands over his eyes. Boom! The revolver jumped back, smacking Ernie right in the face and then flying out of his hands. Ernie's knees buckled as if someone had sucker punched him. He staggered backwards, slamming his hands over his mouth, smashed to the ground. His airplane was gone, and Jeannie could hear him, and Ernie was screaming, Jesus, Ernie! Crab rushed over. Grandpop dug his fingers into Ernie's shoulders so hard it felt like he was going to break them. Crab, what happened? What's going on? He cried out. Jeannie yanked him away and ran to his brother. Ernie fell on the ground, now curled up into a ball, rocking back and forth. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Had he shot himself? Had he missed the can? Ernie! Ernie! Ernie, you okay? Crab was asking. Crab, what the hell happened? Grandpop demanded, outstretched arms like a zombie. Crab, Jeannie, it hurts. It hurts so bad. Ernie was bawling now. Crab was trying to ease Ernie's hands from his face, trying to see what was the matter. Ernie fought him, shouting over and over, it hurts so bad, it hurts, it hurts. Jeannie was kneeling too, and Crab finally got Ernie's hands down, and that's when they saw blood pouring from the sides of his mouth, down his cheeks, and into the grass. Oh God, please don't let this be happening. Please don't let this be happening. This can't be happening, Jeannie prayed. This can't be happening. Crab! Grandpa bellowed, dropping to his knees. He started crawling toward them on all fours. Brooke, the gun kicked back. Crab finally told him. Recoil. He didn't have it tight enough. Must have slipped. Bit him in the face. Jeannie started crying. The only thing that he could think of was to pull his t-shirt off to sop up the blood. But before he could try, Crab pushed him away. Back up, son. But Jeannie didn't want to back up. Back up, Jeannie. But this was his brother. Jeannie! Grandpa was slapping at the ground in front of him, trying to find exactly where his grandsons were. Jeannie grabbed his arm. Crab started asking Jeannie a bunch of stupid questions. What's your name? Who's your brother? Where are you from? How many fingers are you holding up? Grandpa inched closer and closer and started gently prodding Ernie's face, feeling, Jeannie suspected, like for any changes, like swelling or broken bones. But Ernie wiped his face away. So Grandpa began bombarding Crab with what Jeannie decided were definitely better questions. Do you think he has a concussion? Is his nose broken? What about his jaw? Teeth? Crab tried to get Ernie to stand. At least his howling had calmed to a low moan. Blood soaked through the collar of his t-shirt. Teeth! Grandpa repeated, more worried. Ernie, now on one knee, heaved like he was going to throw up or was choking on something. Then he spit out 3 little rocks, one by one, like little pumpkin seeds. Teeth. Then he started howling again. Looks like, yeah, he lost 3. Right up the front, Crab said, picking up each tooth off the ground. He grabbed a beer bottle from the bag that he brought. He put the teeth in it. He gave Jeannie the bottle while he helped Ernie stand up. Ernie cried even harder as he got to his feet. So Jeannie cried harder too. Ernie covered his mouth, trying to keep some of the cry in. Jeannie covered his own mouth for the same reason. It was the worst game of Pete and repeat that they had ever played. And that is the end of chapter 16.